All right. So again, we've got this top hat question about trademarks that I think is really good. It gets to the heart of what trademark is all about. So I just want to see kind of where you guys are. All right. Intent doesn't matter. We don't care about intent with trademarks. So throw out A. B, that John Deere's mark was registered while Matt's was not. Nope, doesn't matter. That the purchasers would likely confuse the two marks. That's going to be the correct answer because that is big picture item. When it comes to trademark law, you just have to remember it's all about consumer confusion. Would a reasonable person confuse these two marks? All right, so good. Most of you got that one right. So that is helpful. Any questions about that top hat question before we move on?
Yeah, I've got one.
Wait,
There's this guy that's been running around. I think
who's
he's
this?
trying to steal my look. What action can I take against him?
All right, class. We need to help a Mandalorian. Um, so, so Cal Shevlaw here
That's an
has
awesome costume, dude.
yes, and he's actually hired all of us in this class, paying us in a lot of what do you call them, credits for this. So yeah, if Cal Shevlaw here wants to sue any other unnamed Mandalorian out there, what would he do? Assuming U.S. law, blah blah blah. Okay, I'm interested to hear your thoughts here.
Well, wouldn't that be a cultural thing? So I can't imagine that you'd be able to register a culture exclusively, would you?
Are you sure about that?
Mandalorians are above the law, so
All right. So good questions. Can you trademark or protect with intellectual property culture? Let's throw that out. Let's focus our question here into the look and feel of what's going on here with Mando and Cal.
Do we need to step into the real world?
Yes, I guess we have to really get this right and to analyze this correctly. I guess let's say Cal lives in where do you have to live in the U.S., Cal? So
Okay. Potato Hoe, is that a state?
Yep, it is. It's a great state. We love it here. So all right, so Cal's in Idaho. Let's say Mando's in California, because I think he is.
Of course
So
he is.
it's fitting. And yeah, taking out like all the galactic legal stuff and cultural stuff. I want you to look at Cal. This would be a good place to start. What could Cal protect under U.S. intellectual property law? Now that you know patents, copyrights, trademarks, and a number of other items that fit under intellectual property, what could he do to protect what he's got and what you can see on his screen right now?
Could he technically like trademark that little symbol he has on his chest there, that red bird he's got?
Yeah. And somebody else was saying something too. So yeah, Christopher's right. We've got a trademark issue because that mark identifies Cal and the services or products, whatever you want to do, Cal, that he provides. That's an identifying mark. So that's awesome. And I think somebody else was talking. Or maybe their speaker was just accidentally on. All right, anybody else?
Well, you could probably patent the design of the armor.
All right. And maybe not the, well, yeah, I mean, there are design patents. And so, yeah, that's true. And you could probably also patent the way that Cal created the armor, the helmet, for example, or the radio and the special way that he did the radio and the helmet. So yeah, that's good too.
The actual like design or method by which they create the style of armor, I guess would be.
Yeah. Yep, definitely patentable. So that's awesome. All right, so Cal, let's tell him what's going on here with the whole Mandalorian intellectual property stuff. Do you want to talk to them about that? Because I think this is
Sure.
fascinating.
Yeah. So I am a member of the Mandalorian Mercs. It's a costume club. It's a global costume club. Thousands of members worldwide. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not like echoing inside my helmet. And so what we do is we've existed since about 2005, I think it was, or maybe a little bit longer than that. We've been around for about 15 years or so. Kind of split off from the 501st Legion, which is another Star Wars costuming club, which started in 1997. It was really the first. There's also the Rebel Legion, which is, so the 501st focuses specifically on, started with stormtroopers and kind of evolved to include all of the villains. The Rebel Legion includes all of the heroes. And then you have us, the Mandalorian Mercs. We're so awesome that we represent the Mandalorian culture. And we did it before it was cool.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was gonna say. I have known Cal for what, like 5 years now, and he was doing this way before Mandalorian came out. So yeah, he's
This armor is older than that show.
That's right. And yeah, talk to him about do you like for example, do you worry about getting sued by Disney now that Disney owns the intellectual property for all of this?
So that's kind of a funny thing. Lucasfilm really let us play in their sandbox. They didn't care. One of the things we do is we raise a lot of money for different charities, particularly Make-A-Wish is one of our big ones. And so that looks really good on them, right? But of course, you have to buy stuff from somewhere. I mean, technically you have to buy stuff from somewhere, I guess. Mine was all scratch built because I'm awesome like that. But there are makers who will craft armor and sell it for other people, or they'll cast helmets and sell it, or they'll even raise it out of steel and things like that, or they'll make electronics to go inside the helmet, props, weapons, blasters, things like that. So we do have a lot of vendors within the clubs that make various different types. Actually, can I show them? Can I share my screen?
Yeah, let me make you pull this up real quick. All right, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of these. These are ones, if you are in the Rexburg area or if you're in Idaho, these folks are actually local to you. So this is Bendu Armory. They're here in Rexburg. What do they make? Come on, say it with me.
Freaking awesome lightsabers.
Heck yeah. So here we go. They've got some freaking awesome lightsabers. So if we go in here, they've got some aluminum sabers. They've got carbon fiber sabers. They've got quip swap core systems, empty hilts. They've got apparel hats and stuff with their brand. They've got blades, NeoPixel blades, all these things. These two are very, if you've watched the Clone Wars, you'll recognize those two right there. These are very similar to those used by young Jedi Padawan Ahsoka Tano. So is there a problem here?
All of them are like, yeah.
Yeah, technically. Technically, we are all, whenever we do this stuff, we are technically in violation of copyright. But the thing is, Disney lets us play in their sandbox, like I said before, but typically because we offer things that they don't necessarily sell to the public. So they don't necessarily sell dual-worthy lightsabers made out of aluminum, offered, modeled after those by Ahsoka Tano. The Custom Saber Shop, their warehouse is located just down in Idaho Falls. Now they have modular kit systems that you can buy parts and you can build them. They also have replicas. If I click on this Graflex, oh, they don't have it anymore. It must be out. But they have replicas of, let's see if I can find it. Anyway, they have replicas of Luke's lightsaber, of Obi-Wan Kenobi's, of Vader's, Kanan Jarrus. They've got all these replicas of these well-known character lightsabers. Again, made out of metal, dual worthy. I mean, you and your buddy could each buy one and just beat the crap out of each other for a few hours with these, and they'd
I
hold
just
up
saw
pretty
they're
well.
like they're a lot of money too.
They are. They're a lot for a really basic one. I put one together, put the electronics into one for a buddy who wanted a lightsaber for a baby gender reveal. So I chose the LED based on the gender. They got a few pieces for the hilt and a heat sink and some things like that. It was well over $200 for that. So they're making quite a bit. These folks, they're based out of Idaho Falls and BYU Idaho graduates. They make sabak decks, Republic credits, glowing Jawa eyes, stuff for Harrison Dula, patches, dice, Suga. So they make all this stuff and they sell it. Inferno Squad helmets, things like that. So what's the difference between them and this person?
Would it
Can you
be
guess?
the scale of the amount of merchandise that is spread out around, I guess, the states? Because I guess the Baby Yoda one was being overproduced, and it was competing against maybe what Disney was already providing in their stores.
That was their big issue. So this came out. This happened. You can see this happened in January. The Mandalorian came out in, what was it, November or October? I can't remember which now. But Baby Yoda was a hot item. It was a hot thing, and everybody wanted Baby Yoda plushes and things like that. And Disney hadn't set up to sell them yet. They had everything in line and lined up, and they were getting ready to really release all the merch. But all these Etsy sellers got on there before them, and oh man. Oh man.
I just saw the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Right. Would you say this might be harmful to the image that Disney is trying to create for themselves around Baby Yoda?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's definitely coming to haunt my nightmares.
There's a difference between this, cute, cuddly.
What is
Everybody
wrong
wants
with that?
one. Oh, that's not bad. Now that's
Can't unsee
cute,
that.
but oh my gosh. This is the stuff nightmares are made of.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I need to spit or something. That's gross.
Now it's
Stop
bigger.
it, Rob. I'm
That's the
your
face of a
co-host.
monkey.
Okay, I'll stop.
Like a coochie monkey.
Yeah, the thing is, they're selling things that Disney's not necessarily offering. And they're doing it for people who are cosplaying and providing a service for Disney and Lucasfilm. So at any time, could they tell us that we can't dress up in costume anymore and run around and do this? Absolutely. Who do you think owns this armor design? Me or Disney? I came up with the color scheme and the armor placement, got the bird on there.
I would say Disney.
Yep. If I create something entirely new that's never been in the franchise before, and I get approved through the costume club with this costume, that new thing that I've created, that I've designed, who owns it?
You do, since it's never been
No.
done before.
No, it's Disney still.
Disney will own it because now it's been approved with this club. That was a trick question. I
Um,
intended to get you guys with that one.
Wouldn't Disney own anything that's fan made from their services? So even if it's a completely new idea, because it was based off of what they provide, wouldn't it always be owned by Disney?
That's a question for the lawyer.
Well,
If it's used in the costume clubs, yes.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't like this before, right? It was just when Disney acquired Lucasfilm that everything that you created, Disney claimed ownership in. Is that right?
It's always been, if we created it for the express purpose of getting it approved in the club, Lucasfilm has claimed copyright ownership for it. That's why I've got a few things that I've designed that I've not approved in here.
Okay. So
okay, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Emma.
I just got this like random question just popped into my mind. So I was wondering, because you go to Disney, and Disneyland or Disney World or any of their other locations around the world, and you go and you have a good time, you take family photos and stuff like that. And say for some reason one of those family photos has an issue with it, does Disney technically own that picture because you took it in their establishment?
Okay. These are the questions, Emma, that was perfect. These are the questions that I love, that I want everybody starting to ask these questions.
Got a young one. And Adika
has got fatherly duties. But yeah, it's a great question, and it comes up a lot, right? Because somebody has a copyright in an architecture plan, like maybe I design my own house or whatever, and the question becomes, can people come and take a picture of that, and can I sue them for taking or having pictures of my house? Or like your question at Disney World, does Disney World own the rights to your picture? And really the answer to that is no. And this is kind of going back to Wednesday's class about copyright. But once you've created something, once you have a copyright, other people are allowed like incidental use, and pictures would fall under that. Now, where people get in trouble, and this is it's such a good question, because it brings out an important nuance here. Again, I take pictures of at Disney World with my kids in front of the castle. I own the rights to that picture. It doesn't matter that it's got Disney-owned property behind it. But it has morphed a little bit, and I think it's important to understand. In the last year or two, there have been multiple lawsuits of models. So imagine like you're a model for the Gap, and you go take a picture in front of graffiti, like a graffiti mural in downtown London or LA or San Francisco, wherever. And then that ends up in your catalog. Well, the owner of that copyright of the graffiti art, the wall art, whatever you want to call it, they've been successful in suing the Gap and Instagram models or influencers, whatever you call them, all of these other people, because, well, they're profiting off of their copyrighted material, the art on the wall, for example. So that's the nuance. Like a building, that incidental picture, like you're fine. But once you start trying to monetize it or take advantage or have the appearance of ownership or a license to take that picture from the creator, then you can be sued for copyright infringement. And lots of people have lost those cases. So yeah, that's a great case, or a great question, Emma.
Really helps. Quick question. Would you say that Disney right now is allowing so many people to use, like, do these variations of Star Wars and all of that because they cannot bast themselves to do it themselves? And also it can be a free promoting for this huge franchise that it is. But at the same time, I would think about, like, a lightsaber in Disneyland is like $200 or so, but they're not really made for some fans wants to like actual fights or whatever, So instead of Disney doing that, they just allow people to do it because they don't want to take all the responsibility of the fans asking for all these things that they cannot make or produce.
Okay, so Rob, I'll let you jump in here. Let me just say one thing, and I think it was Tirza that posted this. But yeah, do not mess with Disney. every Yoda producer on Etsy, and they all got letters from Disney's attorneys telling them to shut down or pay fines. And all of a sudden the Baby Yoda stuff disappeared off of Etsy. It'll still pop up every once in a while, but all of those people are just like begging Disney to sue them. And so, yeah, don't do that. Disney has an army of attorneys that, and other people that are just looking, like we talked about on Wednesday, for that PTA in California that shows the Lion King during a fundraiser. They sent a letter and said, pay us money or else we're going to sue you for more. So yeah, you do have to be careful. But yeah, Rob, why don't you kind of jump in and fill in any thoughts there?
I don't know if you mentioned on Wednesday, Disney has sued not only the PTA, but they've sued daycares because they had a Mickey Mouse mural painted on the wall. Disney doesn't mess around with their stuff. Now, to Lucas's point, one of the reasons y'all know that Apple almost went completely out of business in the late 90s, right? Like way underwater, like totally in the red, hemorrhaging money. Then they brought Steve Jobs back in. So they had basically kicked him out. They brought him back in. If you read his autobiography, you'll see all this. It's a really great one. But essentially, what Apple did is they spread themselves so thin trying to please every single possible customer they could ever have, to the point where they had products that were competing with each other that basically did the same thing, but just a slightly different way. And it was all garbage. The more they tried to create and the more they tried to grow their merchandise line, the lower the quality dipped. And Disney realizes that. I mean, they're a big enough entity. They can have a pretty massive merch line. I mean, if you've walked into a Disney store ever, you realize how big their merchandise line is. But at some point too, it costs more for them to make 17 different kinds of lightsabers than it would be worth for them to do it. And so there's a lot of things they'll let slide. Now with the Baby Yoda thing, they were getting ready to release all their Baby Yoda merchandise. And so essentially what they did in order to make the most money possible is they cleared out all the competition. So if it looks like they're going to lose out on something, or if you're going to damage their brand in some way or another, then they'll come after you.
I have a quick question.
Hey, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, let's go to that. And then who else had a question?
Sophia.
Okay. So yeah, Tirza and then Sophia.
So I had a mission companion who worked with they couldn't exactly call it like the Disney princess, but the business was basically they would employ people to dress up as Disney princesses and then go to parties. How would that work? Because I know that they couldn't call them by their names, but they would still dress up almost to the T exactly how they looked. Is that technically copyrighted, and could they get in trouble for that?
It's not Princess Aurora, it's Princess Sleepy Time.
So even though the costume's the same and everything, as long as they say something else, it works.
And Tirza, this is a great question, because the answer to this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about all semester. Would a reasonable person have some confusion about who this princess was? And if yes, then it very well could be a copyright or a trademark infringement. All these princesses have their own trademarks as well. So it's probably a trademark issue. And yeah, they should be concerned about it. Like if Disney finds out about this, they'll get sued for everything.
Brother Hales, will this game be taken internationally? Because I'm from Peru, and like this is so common to do. Like people they say, "Oh, we have Elsa in the show. We have all these other names."
Yeah,
and I guess they're just violating the trademarks and all.
They are. Disney just usually doesn't choose to prosecute them.
Yeah, and they'll prioritize it. Like Disney has an attorney in Peru watching over this, but they're going over the biggest money makers first and suing them. Because yeah, the US and Peru and every country, we've got our intellectual property treaties to protect mostly Mickey Mouse, but the other stuff too.
So to bounce a question off of that, does that mean that Disney bought the rights to each of those princess names from like the publishers or whatever of the Grimm fairy tales? I guess I don't know how that works, where they were just kind of stories
Wow.
passed down over a long time. How does that work?
Okay. Oh, I love this class. All right. These are great questions. All right. So the Brothers Grimm or whatever, none of that has copyright anymore. There's no more copyright protection in Hansel and Gretel or any of that stuff. Why? Because like the time period for that has passed. Like, yeah, Disney would love to stretch it out forever, but these stories that are hundreds, thousands of years old, nobody owns the copyright anymore to those. What Disney does have though is the copyright and trademark for their interpretation of those stories. And so that's why, yeah, like Princess Aurora or whatever, like they can't own that name. You could write a book called Princess Aurora or whatever, but if you take from their story and cause confusion as to like if you're piggybacking off of Disney's interpretation, they'll find
Using
it.
their imagery or the names of the dwarves.
That's right. Yeah.
Because in the original, they didn't have names.
Uh-huh. Yep. So yeah, good question. All right.
Hey,
So
Brother Bales.
let's let's go with Sophia real quick and then ask some more.
Okay, so my question is when, because like you know how they say that like you can show movies to like a bunch of people. So like if I'm in my house and I invite like 20 people to watch a movie, is there like a copyright infringement, or do I have to be making money with it?
You're going to be okay as long as it's a private viewing, and you can interpret that that's got some broad interpretation. But what it's come down to is like if it's you and your friends or your ward or just some group like that, you're okay. The PTA got in trouble because it was also a fundraiser.
What Sophia just asked, isn't that under the Family Movie Act of 2005 or something?
That's what VidAngel thought, and they were wrong. So,
well, I mean, if it's like private viewing, because I did that case in my legal brief.
Yeah. The private viewing stuff is going to be fine. It's just, you're right. Once you introduce other elements like a fundraiser, or you're also selling hot dogs or just whatever else, that's going to get you into trouble.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, they own like The Simpsons and stuff. So like they would own all the copyrights and everything for that as well.
Yep. And that was part of the sale. So remember, intellectual property rights are just like other property rights, houses, land, UCC goods, all of these things can be bought and sold. And it's the exact same with intellectual property. So you can either sell your rights to something that you've created and have a copyright in. You can also just license it out. And licensing is very important. And that is what a lot of these companies do, is they will, like Disney, for example, can't create all of the products themselves that people want to buy with Baby Yoda. So they've licensed out the image of Baby Yoda so that others can create, Mattel or whoever can create the toys that will satisfy the demand for all of the Baby Yoda craze that's going on still. And so, yeah, you can either sell it outright or you can license it. All right. Yeah, Nicholas.
So on that one website that Cal, or I guess Rob, showed us, where it was called like they weren't called lightsabers, they were just sabers and they had different names.
Mm-hmm.
So even though that they're not using like the trademarked name or copyrighted name of lightsaber, because I do believe that they own the rights to the word lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, why does it still fall under Disney's property even when they copy? I guess I'm confused about, like, if they are making something that looks like a lightsaber but they don't call it a lightsaber, why is it owned by Disney? Or I don't know, maybe that's a dumb question.
No, it's a good question. It's just two separate issues. Do you want to take this, Rob?
I was going to bring up the Super Bowl halftime show from a few years ago with the Dancing Sharks, what was it, Katy Perry or something like that. So somebody created
And like you
a
didn't know that was
replica costume of those dancing sharks, and Katy Perry and her group tried to sue them. Well, of course, it was a copyright lawsuit, and Katy Perry actually lost because everything that they had they brought out all the things that they had copyrighted, but it was different. There were a few things, there were some minor differences between the copyrighted design and what actually appeared on stage. Like the number of gills was different, and something about the shape of the fins or whatever, in all of the diagrams and drawings and things like that. And so what was on stage actually wasn't copyrighted. And so they were able to, the defendants were able to win that case against that. Now, in this case, these aren't exact, completely screen accurate. There's a few minor differences. And again, they're not using, like Brother Hale said, they're not using the character names associated with it. Back on the Custom Saber Shop, I clicked on the link for the Graflex Highland sabers. And the reason for that is the original lightsaber that Obi-Wan Kenobi gave to Luke Skywalker, that was made out of a Graflex camera flash, hence the name Graflex. And so there are a few things here and there that might be a little bit different, but in essence, you know, they're avoiding the use of the characters' names. There's a few differences, so they may not be 100% screen accurate.
Yeah, and this is I love the question because I think it's important to differentiate between two different things. Like Rob or Cal, his outfit, like once you register that with the group, then that costume, that the look and feel of what you've created becomes the intellectual property of Disney, with an implied license that you're allowed to wear it because you created it. Now with and that's very different than those lightsabers or light swords, whatever they called it, because they didn't call it lightsabers. That's not owned by Disney. They're using a separate defense of this doesn't violate copyright. And remember the tests between the two. This is important. With copyright, the way to always kind of check whether or not you're infringing on somebody else's copyright is that whole idea of like, is there substantial similarity? And here's a better test. I heard this in law school, and I think it's the best way to look at it. Copyright, these words mean something. It means if you own the copyright to some, you know, let's say I wrote this book. I own the copyright to this book, which means I have the right to copy it. Like here, hallelujah, like English means something again. I have the right to copy this because I own the copyright. Okay, now, where was I going with this? So that's the copyright definition, and infringement is when you copy something that you don't own the copyright to. That's infringement, okay? That's where I was going with this. So with the lightsaber, they're saying, look, we're not copying it. We created a different sword. Yeah, it's based on it. But there's enough differences that we're not violating somebody else's intellectual property. And so that's important. And that's why they're probably okay. Now, trademark, remember, trademark is just likelihood of confusion. Don't use the likelihood of confusion test with copyright. That can get you into trouble, because if you used the likelihood of confusion with copyright, then you might say that those lightsabers are going to cause confusion, and therefore it's copyright infringement. But that's not the test. Likelihood of confusion is just an issue for trademark. And this is probably a good segue for us to go into trademark law. So Rob,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Kaylee.
So I don't know exactly what they're called, but you know the movies that are made to make fun of other movies, kind of like Robin Hood Men in Tights or Spaceballs.
Okay, so I'm so glad like college students still know about these movies. Rob, like, this is inspiring.
Yeah, I love those. Spaceballs is fantastic. We need Spaceballs too. The search for more money.
So yeah, Haley, these parodies, you're right.
Parodies, that's the word.
They're fine simply because, one, they're not copying. It falls under that fair use exception that we talked about on Wednesday, and
So
yeah.
they change it enough, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, they change it. They're making a commentary on it. There's a few things going on. One of the issues that some of these replica or prop makers or toy makers come in, one of the issues they have is they think that their reproduction of this intellectual property falls under parody or fair use, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what another question? And then Rob, I'll let you go. So yeah, if anybody else has a question for Rob, jump in.
So to me, I just had a question about fair use and copyright, because you can't copyright folklore, right? So if it's like stories passed down from generation to generation in a certain culture, then those are free to use, right? Unless they come up with like new characters or something like that, you can't really copyright claim.
That's right. So yeah, the oral history, that's not copyrighted, but your take on it, like Disney did with all of their movies, that does get copyright because they created something new out of it.
So are the Disney princesses really that copyrighted if they did come out from those types of folklore stories?
Mm-hmm. So that image, that persona that Disney created has intellectual property protection. The stories themselves don't.
Okay.
All right.
So that's why the movie Mirror Mirror is completely fine. They gave the dwarves different names, and they're just using a folklore passed down over generations, and so there's no issue with copyright or anything or trademark infringement there.
That's right.
Or Snow White and the Huntsman.
Yeah. Producers other than Disney could do that, and they're totally within their rights to do that. All right. Cool. Well, thank you, Cal Chevla, for stopping by today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll wrap up trademarks here. We don't need that. And finish up this week's material. So on your screen, I want to make sure that we understand the difference between copyright and trademark. I think lots of students get these confused. What you're seeing on the screen right now are obviously trademarks. Trademarks exist to identify the source of the goods or services provided, usually by a company or an individual. So when you look up here and you see the Dodgers, for example, that image is a trademark because it identifies the team, the Dodgers. This is a team that I grew up watching. I'd go to all of their games. I swear every time I went, they lost, and they just keep doing it to me, but whatever. And that's the Dodgers. So when I see that image, like, what is that? What emotion, what feeling does that evoke in me? Well, I've got Dodger dogs, that ice cream and the hat thing that they do, always sitting up way in the cheap seats because my parents were cheap. Trying to find a parking place, like that's what I think of when I think of, and losing. That's what I think of when I see that image. And that's great. Dodgers, the organization, has spent a lot of money to make me think that. But any of you can like look at these other trademarks on the screen. Like what does this tell you? What does this image convey to you? What info is conveyed just through this one mark? And you can pick anyone, anybody. You have no emotion. Okay, clearly I don't have any students from Alabama. Otherwise, they'd be freaking out about the Gators over here. Well, Well, geez, what am I talking about? McDonald's. You see that image, and what do you think of?
Heartburn.
McDouble.
Yep. You think of specific products. You think of the results of your bad choices to eat maybe too much or whatever there. Anyway, this always reminds me of that Jim Gaffigan skit about McDonald's. It's one of the greatest of all time. He's basically like nobody admits to eating there, but they sell 6 billion burgers a day or something. Anyway, it's pretty funny. Check that one out. I won't try to be a comedian. Yeah, so all of you are like, I don't feel anything when I see McDonald's. That's baloney. You're eating there right now or tonight or something. Somebody is. I know it. And yeah, McDonald's has created a system where they want you to have that feeling. Now, it could be like, oh, that's gross, but it's cheap, and so I like it. And that's fine. McDonald's is okay with you feeling that way as long as you eat there. It's not like you have to see these trademarks and think best in the world every time. No, sometimes we're cheap, and we need those images to spark interest within us. I always love using this image in this class because it's funny, and it's also sad. It's sad because my name is Michael, and of course this image is Michael alone, and that makes me really sad. But I had some students from China 2 semesters ago, and they were cracking up when they saw this image because they're like, yeah, this is Chinese, and it says something like something that sounds similar to McDonald's and in Chinese. And so anyway, this is funny. Like, this is not McDonald's. That's an upside down M. There's enough here to like tell you this probably the color scheme isn't quite right, but it reminds me of an important experience in my life. So after my mission, I was in Central America, and about a year later, I went back with a bunch of friends, and we just backpacked through Central America for a couple of weeks. Like, it was awesome. We never knew where we were going to sleep. We're just on buses with backpacks and going all over Central America. It was actually quite awesome. And at one point, we get to El Salvador, and we go to downtown San Salvador. There's this big Catholic church with a big park out front, pigeons everywhere, and we're just kind of hanging out there waiting for our next bus. I think we were heading to Belize or something. And all of us, like, we'd been out for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden I was like, I am starving. Like, I really want something. And so we packed up and we walked down the street, and I saw the McDonald's sign, right? Like the M. I saw that, and I was like, let's go to McDonald's. Like, I just want a burger right now. Okay, so stay with me. We walk in, I look up at the screen, and it just looks a little different, right? Like, but I think whatever, it's El Salvador. Like, so I order a burger, some fries, and a soda. I get it. They hand it to me. I take it to my table. I sit down, and I take a drink of the Sprite or whatever it was, and I put that down, and I open up the hamburger, and I take a bite. All right. Once I took a bite, I was like, something is wrong. Like not wrong. I was like, something is different. I need to clarify. The burger tasted great. But when I tell you, like, imagine the taste of a McDonald's cheeseburger. Every single, like, don't lie, every single one of you can taste it right now. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you have tasted those your whole life. You know what a McDonald's cheeseburger tastes like, right? So again, when I took the bite, I'm like, it wasn't gross. It was good. Okay, maybe it was better than McDonald's. But when I took it, I just knew that it wasn't McDonald's. And that's when I kind of, like, I remember I put the hamburger down a little bit, and I started looking around like, what is happening? And I look around, and I'm like, this isn't a McDonald's. Like, the color scheme was slightly off. It wasn't called a what's the McDonald's main burger? Big Mac, right? It was called like Big Mac mock or something. Like it was just a little bit off. All right. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not in a McDonald's. Like, where am I? It's like this awakening moment. And what happened to me? Well, I fell victim to trademark infringement. And I figured out what happened. It used to be a McDonald's. It looked like it went out of business. Somebody else bought it, kept the golden arches on outside, but inside painted everything different. On the cup, I remember even looking at the cup, and it was like a McDonald's cup that somebody had used whiteout to white out the McDonald's logo on it. And the wrapper over the hamburger was just regular paper. It was just like white paper instead of the yellow McDonald's paper that they use. Like, but again, I didn't notice any of this until I took a bite of the burger and realized something was different. And what is that? Well, in essence, it's trademark infringement. There was a likelihood of confusion as to the source. Why? Because I thought I was going into a McDonald's. Much like this image here that you see here, this, you would think maybe if, like, just on a passing glance, if you're a tourist and you just see this and you're like, I'm gonna go grab a McRib. Gosh, I can't believe I said that. Like, nobody eats McRibs. But don't do. Actually, I kind of like it. It's so bad that it's good. Kind of like those tacos at Jack in the Box. But I'm getting out of my area of expertise here. That is trademark infringement because, again, you thought you were getting McDonald's. Again, you're not disappointed. I wasn't disappointed. The hamburger was great, but it definitely wasn't McDonald's. And they probably got me to go in because I thought it was McDonald's. That's the lesson here. That's the key to trademark infringement. All right. So this slide just goes over like what a trademark is. It could be a word, it could be a sound. Usually it's the logo, right? But it could be these other things. The sound, like the NBC sound, the dun dun dun. Like you hear that and you're like, cool, I'm watching NBC. Although my kids don't know what that is because we don't watch TV. But yeah, it just identifies the goods or services. That's what it's all about. This case right here, I've always thought was really interesting. Coca-Cola had their trademark, and along comes a company called Coke. And they were like, but we're not that Coke. We're Coke with a K, thinking, again, thinking they're clever and they're going to get away with it. They're like, let's just change the C to a K. And then it's not trademark infringement because it's Coke with a K. Ha ha. IBC companies are notorious for this. They're always like, well, I just changed this little thing, and so it's not trademark infringement. And I love slapping IBC companies around. It's fun because they're just trying to do something that exactly 100 years ago, Coke with a K tried to do this. They ended up losing. Why? Because you walk, 100 years ago, if you wanted a soda, you'd go to the soda store. What did they call it? Like fountain shops or something. And you'd walk in there and you'd say, hey, bartender, whatever you call a bartender at a soda shop, I'd like a Coke, but the one with the K, please. You could see why there would be likelihood of confusion if in a world where you're speaking and not just writing. And so that's why Coke with a K ended up losing. So anyway, their defense was Coca-Cola, we should pull their trademark because they're lying. They're making us think that there are coca leaves or cocaine in the soda, and there aren't, because by 1920, Coca-Cola had taken out the cocaine from the soda. Thank goodness. And anyway, so they were basically saying Coke with a K was arguing that Coca-Cola shouldn't have a trademark because they're lying. And the federal judge just said, it doesn't matter. Like trademark doesn't have to be an accurate depiction or an accurate representation of what the product is. It's just a name, a sound, a symbol that identifies the source. So now we still have Coca-Cola. We don't have Coke with a K.
So Brother Hales, quick question on that one.
Yeah.
What about places like I've been told that in the South they refer to any kind of soda as Coke. So like, how would that trademark come into play there if it's just culturally what they do?
Yeah. So Coke actually doesn't want them to do that anymore. It's quite interesting. Coke wants them to call it root beer or Sprite or whatever else. And so you've seen that in the South, it's pulled back. People don't say like, pass me a Coke anymore. Well, not as much. Why? Because that's going to get into the generic issue. So hold that thought, because it's really good. I'm just going to bring it up when we start talking about trademark protection and all of that. Let me check the time. All right. I have a feeling that we're going to go over today. So you can get off if you want. I'm recording this. I'll upload it later. And again, I speak slow, so you can watch it at 2 times speed or something. So yeah, we'll get back to trademark protection in a second, but I want to talk quickly about dilution. All right, so dilution is not trademark dilution is not trademark infringement. It's something else completely, and it was created to fill a void that we had, and I think to understand this, like I've got this example of Sam Buck's coffee down on the bottom, but I've got a better example, and this always wakes up the guys in the class, because yeah, we're gonna talk about lingerie for a second here. So all the guys are like, what? I like this class. Okay, so here's the deal. All right, and I love this case because it's exactly what you would think. There was this guy, and he was it was Kentucky or Kansas. It was one of those two. It was one of the K states. And he's a pervert. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell you right now. And he starts a store, and his name is Victor, by the way. So yeah, Victor wants to start a store, and he's gonna call it Victor's Little Secret. All right. Now he starts this store, and he puts the sign up on the street, and it's basically like, I'm just guessing here, I think it's like a sex store or something, like weird stuff. All right. And there he is operating Victor's Little Secret. And Victoria's Secret hears about this. Like I could have asked you, you would have figured out who's mad about this. Victoria's Secret hears about this, and they're, as you might imagine, they're not really happy about it. Why? Because this guy is basically piggybacking off of their name to create a more sleazy version of their, like what they've tried to create as a classy lingerie store. And here comes Victor doing this, right? Like they're not happy with it. So imagine that if you had to sue Victor with trademark law, what's the problem here? For trademark infringement, why do you think that Victoria's Secret could not win that case?
Because most people know that there's going to be a difference.
Yeah, nobody walked up to Victor's Little Secret and said, oh, I'm going to go into Victoria's Secret. Like, this was not that store. Yeah, again, nobody thought that, but everybody walked by, and what did they say? Like if you walked by, what would you think as soon as you saw this?
That it looks like Victoria's Secret, maybe.
Yeah, and what they did is they saw it and they're like, Victor, you little pervert. Like, and then they were like, I know what you're trying to do, Victor. And that right there means Victoria's Secret can't win because there's no likelihood of confusion. Like nobody went into Victor's Little Secret going, I thought I was in Victoria's Secret. Like, what's going on here? And that's why trademark dilution exists. The idea here is that really it's you see the company's name, their logo, the sound, whatever. And when you see it, you don't think, like that's the company. There's no confusion, but you do think, like this is the test. You see it or you hear it and you're like, I see what you tried to do there. That is like the sure sign of trademark dilution. That is the way to figure it out. Kind of like on the bottom of this slide with Sam Buck's coffee. Again, it could be a red sign, like it's not green like Starbucks. It's a different color. It's a different feel. Nothing looks like Starbucks, and it says Sam Buck's clearly. And yet, everybody sees Sam Buck's coffee, and they're like, I know what you're doing. And it doesn't matter that the guy that started it, his name was Sam. It doesn't matter. Once you threw that Bucks on there and made it a coffee shop, like, we figured it out. You're just trying to piggyback off of somebody else's trademark. That's really what to look for. Okay, so that's trademark dilution. Just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so now let's jump back to trademarks. You register this with the USPTO, so that the same website that I used to show you, let's just do it, that I used to show you, pull this down a little bit, patents, you're going to do the same thing. So you go back to USPTO, but instead of going to patents, you can go to trademarks. And again, you can come in here, search, or yeah, we're going to search the trademark database, and you can find all of the trademarks that, let's just do, let's just stick here with Tesla Motors, or just Tesla, either one would work, and it went down. So this happens with the trademarks, the USPTO's website every once in a while. Anyway, yeah, you can search it, you can find other people's trademarks. So that's what that slide is all about. Now this slide right here really gets to kind of when can you trademark something. All right, so for this, I'm going to pull up my whiteboard again so you can see what is going on here. All right, and right now, let's see. The way to look at this is imagine it as like a continuum here. And what we're going to have, this is the distinctiveness chart. And this tells you more or less when you can protect something, when you can get your mark trademarked. All right, now we start with, just remember, like, I think the way to look at this is over here with the fanciful. These are just words that are completely made up, right? We've got like something like Xerox or Google, any other fanciful names you can think, like these are companies that just made up a name out of thin air.
Haagen-Dazs.
Haagen-Dazs.
Totally made up word. Does not exist.
Yeah, that's not like some German word.
I'm pretty sure the founder's from New Jersey.
Okay, it just seems like if you want to swear at somebody in German, Haagen-Dazs. Anyway, I shouldn't. That's rude. I shouldn't. Sorry to my German friends. All right. So yeah, these are just made up words. Now we can move down here to the arbitrary. These are real words, but have nothing to do with the product or service being sold. So one that I love is Dutch Boy Paint. Why? Because there are actual Dutch boys right now living, playing in those flower fields that they have, or whatever. Like that exists. But what does that have to do with paint? I don't know, like nothing. So again, we just, same with Apple. Apple would fill this into, like, there are apples, but it has nothing to do with computers. So that's an arbitrary mark. Cool, you can trademark it. The next one and the last one that you can automatically get protection for, oh geez, what am I doing? Give me my example before I tell you what it is. So these are the suggestive marks. So this would be like Tesla. Tesla cars are electric cars. Nikola Tesla was a inventor that came up with all kinds of cool things with electricity. So it's suggestive of the electric car company. Dairy Queen, stuff like this. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put right here, everything over here, you can trademark that. You're not gonna have to worry about it. Go ahead and get your trademark. Now where we start having trouble is where we move over here to something called descriptive. Descriptive marks just usually, almost always, I should say, can't get trademark protection. You can't trademark something like, well, last semester, there was a group of students and they came to my class and we helped them out because they wanted to start a company called Drone. You guys might know these guys. Drone Drop Delivery. All right, what did they do? They took a drone and they connected food to it, and then they would drop it to deliver the food. just like this says, it was descriptive. Like the name of the company described what they did, meaning you can't get a trademark for that. And what does that really mean? Like if you can't get a trademark, it means somebody else can use the name of your company or cause confusion, basically. Why? Because you picked a name that just describes what you do. Now, on the far end of this is something that will never get trademark protection. And those are the generic trademarks. This is like naming your bike company, the bike company or something, right? Like if you sell apples, you're like, I'm going to trademark apples for selling apples. And then I'll be able to keep everybody else from selling apple. Like you see the absurdity of this. You can't trademark a generic term. All right. And so anyway, yeah, bike is like, or apple to sell apples. Now you've got Apple over here, but that's not to sell apples. That's to sell computers, hence arbitrary. Questions on this part?
I got a question.
Yeah.
So if you start adding in like a name to that generic term, that's when you start able to start trademark like Bill's Bike Shop or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do something now. If you do something like, you can't even see my screen anyway. If you do Bill's Bike Shop, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods. It just means that you're not as generic and you're probably more descriptive. So Bill's Bike Shop moves that over to descriptive because it is actually Bill's Bike Shop. And there, remember with descriptive, let me go back real quick just so you can kind of see this, what I'm doing here. What I'm going to do is for this red means never. Like you're never going to be able to get a trademark for a generic term. Now descriptive, this right here, you might be able to. You just have to prove that in the geographic area where you operate, when people hear Bill's Bike Shop, this is the whole secondary meaning thing that you read about, by the way. It just means like when you hear Bill's Bike Shop, you don't think, oh, there must be a guy named Bill who has a bike shop. But when you hear Bill's Bike Shop, you say, oh yeah, that store. That's what we call secondary meaning. You can't read anything that I'm saying. I just might as well do this. But yeah, once it gets secondary meaning, and that means like when you hear that word, you associate it with the specific store, the specific company, then you might be able to trademark it. But still, it takes a long time and it's very expensive. So be careful with stuff like that. Let's see. Wait, I was about to share my screen. Nicholas, did you raise your hand a second ago?
Yeah, so my question is, Coca-Cola, their recipe is under trademark secret.
Yeah.
So
not trademark secret, it's a trade secret.
Trade secret.
We'll talk about that on Monday.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just wondering, like, if we'll get to it, but like McDonald's, their Big Mac, is it trademarked, like the actual sandwich itself, or is it patented?
It's trademarked.
How does
the
trademarked
is a trademark for that product, meaning the sandwich, the hamburger. So yeah, that's a trademark. And
so,
well, let me say real quick, trademarks last forever. All right, unlike patents and copyrights, trademarks last forever, and that makes sense. Like you could imagine the absurdity if like Coca-Cola stopped being a trademark and then anybody could use Coca-Cola to identify their services or product. That just doesn't make sense. So yeah, that just keep that in mind. And trade secrets last forever too, but so do trademarks. Okay.
So I guess my question was like, if some little burger joint down the road made a burger that had, you know, a bun, a patty, and then a bun and a patty and a bun, and they put some sort of sauce on it, and they called it the Big Boy or something like that. obviously they don't have like the secret sauce recipe. They're not calling it the Big Mac. And they can't trademark a burger because it's too generic. Like they can't be like, we claim the rights to a burger.
Yeah.
But would that be because it's like close enough to what Big Mac has trademarked as what McDonald's has trademarked as the Big Mac? Is that fair? Can people do that? Can they use a sandwich that has like the same properties as a Big Mac, but they don't call it a Big Mac?
Yeah, absolutely. And really the key there is, would there be confusion? Like if I started I call my hamburger place, I'm going to call it Big Mike's, downtown Rexburg, come to Big Mike's. And in there, I've got the Big Boy burger. Would anybody walk in and be like, oh, the Big Boy, hey, that sounds like the Big Mac, right? Like, I guess some might, but I don't find it likely that there would be any confusion. And even if it looks similar, as long as I'm not using any of their proprietary information, product, sauces, recipes, formulas, whatever, I think that's different enough. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So there's just a recent case of where someone got fired from King's and exposed all recipes and stuff. What would happen to them?
So a lot of not good things. So if you expose trade secrets improperly, like let's say somebody did that with the Coke recipe, right? If you expose it improperly, one, you're going to get sued like so much. and then that there will be fines, you'll lose everything. Now the question is, once the trade secret's out, wrongfully out, does the company lose the right to, like, does Coke all of a sudden lose their right to enforce the trade secret for the formula for Coke? And the answer is probably not. It's always hard to put the genie back into the bottle. Like once it's out, it's out. But if it was done improperly, they may be able to get competitors to not use it. But that's probably more of a lesson for Mondays, because that's when we'll talk about trade secrets. But yeah, usually not. To answer your question, it doesn't mean anybody can use it, but it does mean there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. And that's why Coke does so much to make sure this never gets out. All right, just one more thing here on this slide. In terms of generic trademarks, and this always cracks me up, and this kind of blows the mind of my students a lot too. Trampoline. When I say trampoline, what do you think of? Well, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking of a trampoline. Here's the deal. Trampoline was just the name of the company that came up with and marketed the thing that we now call a trampoline. It was the name of the company. Like get this, like wrap your head around this. The thing that we call a trampoline, its actual name is a vinyl jumping apparatus or something, like a jumping apparatus. So the company Trampoline would sell the jumping apparatus, and because they were so successful, everybody started calling the thing by the name of the company. Right? And now, because that happened, I mean, I have to like show you how this worked, right? Because this is so nuts. Back to our scale here, we've got over here. These are just the fanciful words, and we had trampoline. All right, so that says trampoline, and trampoline was fanciful. It was just a made up word, and yet somehow, because of their sheer success, trampoline made the travel from fanciful all the way down to generic, meaning they lost their trademark. And now, if I want to sell a jumping apparatus, I don't have to call it a jumping apparatus. I can call it a trampoline, which would have been trademark infringement 50 years ago. But because it made this traverse down here to genericness, This is what we call genericide. There's lots of these. You've heard probably like Kleenex is doing their very best to get people to stop calling tissue Kleenex, because Kleenex is the name of the company, and chapstick is the same thing. It's lip balm. Like, don't call it chapstick, because chapstick is the name of our company. Xerox did this for a while. All of these just exist to keep people from committing genericide on their product and basically taking away their trademark rights in it. So I always thought that was super interesting. Okay, and then last slide. Let's not worry about that. Google's, let me just say, Google is going through the same thing. We'll talk about that next week. So yeah, let's stop recording and take some questions.